What do we work on hole number 15? A mid-long par 3, maybe 140 meters long. We have a typical thing that we have on tee shots on all sorts, which are kind of visually difficult, is quietness on the tee box. Of course, there's lots of trouble around here. Maybe not up there, but around the green there's lots of trouble. Uh, First off, it looks worse than it actually is. So there is literally 50 meters, 40 meters of space after the bushes to the green entrance. But if you don't know the golf course, then visually this is quite intimidating. So you have to learn how to direct your thoughts on what you have to think and what you not have to think, what you don't have to think. I think that's equally important. So there's usually good discussions about that, and then finding ways how we can implement a bit more quietness on the tee so there is not all kind of voices jumping around in your head. Then calculating distances, carry distances. We have obviously in this on a yardage book like that, we would have distances to the front of the green, which would be these. So whatever tee box you are, main is 130 from the front of the tee box, and then the back of the tee box is 150. It's always good to know these distances, then you know what club to choose. So there is again knowing numbers, getting numbers. If you don't know the numbers by your yardage card and you don't have anything, then you might have to think about a GPS app that actually makes your life easier so you can get those numbers on the way up to the tee, so you'll be prepared when you have to hit the tee shot. Short game, obviously in an area like this where the bit of flat area around the bunker and the slightly elevated green, we have trouble behind the green. So if you're long, you're gone. So that adds an extra little crispy situation. So we have to realize how we plan an approach shot. So if the approach shot is starting from here and you want to go directly to the flag, then you obviously have a minimum distance you have to carry. If you're playing from over here, we can talk about strategy of landing it early and letting it roll to kind of like avoid the high lofted shot to the flag, which then if you miss it by 2 or 3 meters, you most probably are in trouble behind there. So looking at strategy that help you to avoid big problems is usually what it takes around the green for higher handicappers and mid handicappers. And it's not only about hitting the ball correctly and being able to make good contact with the ball, but it's also about knowing when to go for the flag, when to land it early and let it roll up to the flag. So there's lots of different scenarios we can practice. Then we have this kind of shot we can practice somehow of semi-cut, first cut. We can drop it there and then add a little bit of spice with short and long trouble, which always adds this little competitive edge to the situation, which you don't have on the driving range usually if you're not playing games. So we try and make use of those situations. Quite often we just, instead of playing the ball from up here, we just drop an initial ball somewhere in here and see what the pupil comes up with. So we can discuss strategies. So if the ball's really bad, then the flag's not something that you want to look for, then you go for a space which is secure and short in that case and left. So just in case you come out a little long, you still have some green, and if you come out a bit short, you're still having the ball on short stuff, so you can then carry on from there. So it's always about risk and reward and realizing when there has to be an alarm bell ringing about a situation, not just ignoring difficult situation, flag in the back, behind trouble, and just ignoring it. That's usually a lost ball, or if you're lucky, then you're short, and but then you've been lucky. Okay, and we don't want to be lucky in that game. You want to start knowing how to get around on the golf course. Bunker shot with high risk, obviously that's kind of like the same situation. So we have a bunker shot and behind it's just a no-go zone. So we kind of like practice those shots on this hole. So playing with wind obviously is also something that we can kind of like do here. There's usually quite a bit of wind in here and the wind turns around in that valley behind the hole. So it's kind of like a lot of moving air going through here, and then sometimes the wind goes this way, and sometimes the wind goes this way, and you just have to realize where it is coming from, and then take an aim point and trust that aim point. Interesting situation. Yearly goal system. I it's quite difficult sometimes to set a yearly goal. What should my handicap improvement be like? So it's not only handicap improvement, okay? So usually that's kind of a number that has to improve, but I think the improvement comes sometimes without even trying to do it. If you have some kind of practice routines, which are not only driving range but also fitness and education. With education, I mean golf IQ. Mm, get better in knowing about the game of golf. There's lots of videos out there, YouTube videos from really good, well versed instructors and knowledgeable instructors, and soak everything up. But there is a really important thing. If we soak up information, like, you have to have like a filter system. So you can throw in all you want there. You throw it all you want. So you get to know everything. You get to know everything. But to play golf, there is a filter. You don't need all that up here. This is good to know because this is going to influence how you do things, when you do things, what you practice, and how you change stuff. But to play golf, it doesn't need all that information. That's why a lot of golfers are starting to have paralysis by overanalysis, because they realize that I'm getting better at knowing stuff, but I'm trying to use it all. And that's kind of like a mistake. So there is a learning pattern of what you throw in on top doesn't have to be used when you play golf. All right. So that's kind of like an important point. And if you want to continue with that and take that as a golf educational thing, then try and think about what you are using for yourself that you shouldn't be using when you play golf. Then one of the most important things, work on playing strategy to reduce lost balls. So I've just been talking to you about that situation when we have a golfer that is in a situation like this. This is a typical lost ball situation where if a golfer is not careful and just sees the flag and just tries to hit on the green, and then he comes out of semi-rough and he doesn't really know how he gets the ball, so many things can happen. So it's about learning when is there an alarm bell that is ringing. And that alarm bell should make you aware of the fact that this is a possible ball lost situation. And so that's actually quite a good exercise to go over the golf course and then try and be aware of that. And I'm sure everybody has it to some extent, but some people just ignore it, and it's just no risk, no fun all the time, which can be fun, yeah, but it's also about learning how to be disciplined and not to be greedy. I know you want to get to that flag. I know, but sometimes it's just better, because if you're long, then the ball's gone. So statistically, sometimes it's better to play defensive than always just offensive. All right. So when we go back to those typical lost ball situations, try and find strategies in all different situations. And here's your task. Write down what difficult situations you encounter on a golf course that cost you shots. Write them down. Then they do an Excel sheet with it. And then what you do is, so you have, let's say you have one situation, and then you have a solution. Work the solution. Describe the situation and work a solution. There is solutions for individual problems. If you have another problem, then would look for a solution, right? So this is like side hill lies. It can be a green that you've always played bad because it's really hilly and you want to be aggressive going to the flag, but then sometimes you hit it too hard and you're over the green. There's so many situations where you have to look mentally for a solution that can help you to create a trouble list that then helps you troubleshoot and not lose balls. Create typical shot situations on the course and figure out the best response and only play that solution. So that's kind of like literally a little bit what we said. There is typical shot situations, like on the holes that we have. Sometimes we have holes that have the left side is a no-go. All right, so I have to learn how to take the left side out of play. So I have all this to play with, and I absolutely have not this. So I have to learn how to do that. Now, if the wind comes from that side, it's a different story than when the wind comes from that side. Just to make you aware of, there is a certain amount of shots on a golf course that happen all the time. It's trouble left or trouble right. It's wind left or wind right. So these are situations that you can practice on the golf course or on the driving range first, and then try and put them into practice on the golf course, which puts you into a situation that whatever situation comes up, first of all, if you don't have a solution yet, say hallelujah, and you can put it into your Excel sheet and look for a solution. If you have a solution, try and implement it. Become better at being more disciplined and have one solution to a one scenario, and then play that scenario or that solution in that scenario all the time. So you become better at using that solution in that scenario. I hope I'm explaining myself correctly. Review your rounds with your PGA professionals to analyze if you followed the plan. That's usually quite interesting. If you have instead of having a lesson, invite the golf pro for a coffee and talk about your last round. So you obviously need statistics, maybe you need notes. Come prepared, and then listen and talk to him about the round you did and listen to what he says. This is super, super interesting. How much different we view your round than what you view it. So it's always worth that 1 hour that you invest. Instead of hitting golf balls, invest into strategy and into creating a playing plan. Then check your sleeping and eating habits, obviously, so you are refreshed and energized for each playing and practice session. I think it comes from itself that if you go out drinking the night before, the next day is going to be harder than if you have been resting well and you've been eating well. I think that shouldn't be any discussion at all. And it just really depends on how seriously you take your game. If you like to go and get hammered, then do it, but don't do it on the day before you have an important game. Right? Plan it and then go Thursday, go Friday, and then play Sunday, instead of going out Saturday and then getting hammered and having to play on Sunday. Right? No more information about that. So the next thing is tournament preparation. When we prepare a tournament with a player, it obviously depends on what kind of level of player we have. This is usually what we go about with the player. So every club gets mentioned and gets one distance with a normal carry shot. So the normal carry shot is the distance the ball's in the air. You do that by radar. And then you have a short one, a short distance. So that, a short swing, that means you have a full swing and you have a swing that's a little shorter, but you swing through with the same intensity. And that gives you a second distance. So let's say that's 225. And then you have maybe 210. Okay, so you have a shorter swing that goes a little shorter. You can also add the roll in here if you want to, how far the ball is going to roll out, because that can be quite important as well. Obviously, the higher the trajectory, the less roll there's going to be, but it sometimes helps you to just get a number to a club so you kind of like know what's going to happen. Then the next thing is, once we've done all the shots with the different distances, we go to the wedges. We have a pitching wedge and a gap wedge. We have a lob wedge, we have an approach wedge, we have a sand wedge. Whatever club you have, you are going for a quarter swing, half swing, three-quarter swing, full swing. And if you want, you can do a max swing. So that means there is literally, per club, there's 5 different distances. Okay, you can do that with a full grip position plus with a half grip position. So that would mean, in theory, if you take full grip and half grip, you'd have 10 different distances. I know this is a lot, but it's kind of like what kind of precision you're looking for. That's what professionals are doing sometimes, that they are going the hard way. And then they go through those numbers like every week. They have to do these numbers. So literally, I asked the player to send me this list, this card here, filled out every week, so I know he's done the work. and I can be sure that he has the numbers with him. And then when we go into wind forecast, obviously this is something that's kind of like important, because whatever time frame of the day we play, obviously we're going to play in certain holes, and it's kind of like important to know the direction that the wind is going. You can do that by all kind of wind forecasts. Sometimes there's surfing sites or sailing sites, and just general wind direction. I know there is a piece of, you can't really say if it's going to happen or not, but this is what you can prepare it. Okay, you prepare yourself, and you know that it's this kind of wind that is foreseen. If that situation comes up, then you know what that's going to mean. If you have a headwind, that means you're going to lose distance. So out of 200 to 250 meter, a headwind of 20 kilometers per hour is 8 meters lost. Okay, so if you, and the same thing on the other side, if you have a tailwind, if you have, you get 8 meters more. So obviously it depends on the altitude. That's something that has to be factored in, but it's kind of like getting you into the point that you start preparing yourself. It's just getting about to get ready for what is coming. And the more you do that, the more you are prepared to use this information in a very simple way. I know this looks difficult and looks like a lot of stuff, but it doesn't have to be. It's something that you want to be aware of. If it's 5 kilometers per hour or 20 kilometers an hour, oh, that's 6 meters. That's half a club. All right. So you have to know what kind of like amount of meters you're losing if you're going into the wind or if you're going with the wind. All right. Then when we go into hole planning and of strategically important holes, then what we do is up front, before we go out on a golf course, we start thinking about, okay, hole number 1 off the tee is a driver. I think I'm going to have the wind against, and provision says minus 10 meters. I should be 10 meters short. So that means my carry distance to the bunker is 195. So I know it's going to be 205 to carry it if I have wind against. So then from the fairway, my second shot is going to be a 7 wood, and it's going to be 145, which in theory is going to, with the wind against, is going to be about 135. And I'm going to lay it up to about 75 meters. And then from there, it's a gap wedge. And depending on the pin position, I take notes of what pin position we could await. So we kind of like plan each hole, so we can, when we're out on a golf course, we don't take decisions out of in the heat. We take decisions that have been carefully thought about. What club do I take? Where do I play it? Where's the run out? So on your driver, and then the second shot could have a run out of about 155, 160 meters. So that's 2 bunkers. So if you know that about 155 to 160 could be my run out, depending on what I do with my driver, then you know what club you have to hit to actually stay in play, and not getting over the run out into the bunkers or whatever. So then you go to hole number 2, hole number 3, hole number 4, write down what you do. And whilst you do that, the next thing important, if you prepare a tournament round, is a tally sheet. So we have the first hole, the first hole we hit a driver. On the second hole we hit a 6 iron off the tee. On the third hole we hit a driver. The fourth hole is a pitching wedge. The fifth hole is the driver again. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out how many shots do I have with each club. Obviously that's going to help me to realize what I have to practice if I go and play that golf course. So if I have a lot of pitch shots between 20 and 40 meters foreseeable, I'm not going to practice 70, 90 a lot. That's when I'm going to go and practice these. If I know I have 3 or 4 fairway bunker shots, and they could be potentially between 70 and 90 meters, that's what I go and practice before. All right, so I can use wind direction. I know the wind direction is generally either this way, or this way. And then I can say, okay, I have a lot of wind, a lot of shots. I have in this area, I have a few from here and maybe 3 from there and a few like this. So you kind of like realize how many shots do I take from left to right. And if I know then I have an awful lot of shots left to right, with wind left to right, that's what I'm going to go and practice. Right? So this is really preparing yourself if you are a tournament player, if you are a team player that goes out and plays weekly team competitions with your colleagues, and you go and play different golf courses that you might have not played before, or that you know because you have played them before and you want to become a bit more prepared. So 2 weeks before you start preparing that round, and it's not just the moment of the round you turn up and you say, oh, here I am, what club are we hitting off the first tee? All right, lots of information, but I think there is lots of value in this, and I hope you can take note, maybe mark the video and then come back to it during the year. All right.